Welcome to lecture number 10 for the ICCE intermediate course, and this is the final lecture in this series on culture, and today's lecture is culture and values. What we need are values, but we also need to know where are we getting our values from. When we use the word values, we could also be talking about morality. I would argue that our morals and values should come from being a follower of Christ. But of course, values and morals can come from other places too. When pushed, one person implied that morals and values could not come from Scripture. When pressed, well, what about Hitler? He said, well, who could say he's wrong? And he went on, what is to prevent us from saying Hitler wasn't right? I mean, that is a genuinely difficult question. But whatever defines morality, it's not the Bible. If it was, we'd be stoning people for breaking the Sabbath. And you can see the source that I've got that from below. Values, where should they come from? Well, first of all, they should take precedent above our culture. They should be the essence that steers our cultural expression and moulds our cultural expression in every way. They need to come from more than our upbringing or education or the place that we happen to have been born. The best place they should come from, I would say, is from being a follower of the way, our relationship with the Christ. Oftentimes when people say they have Christian values, they actually do not. And their values have nothing to do with Scripture, or more importantly, being a follower of the way, or becoming like Christ. To slightly digress, an important point. One of the things that I have not said up to now, but something that I hope you have realised by these lectures, I am constantly implying, but let me say it clearly, just because something is cultural and culturally accepted as being so does not make it right, nor does it mean that it should not be challenged. Here are some values that I think are tremendously important, particularly very important to people who want to be followers of the way. This, of course, is not the whole list of the values of the way, but I think some important ones nevertheless. Number 1, non-religious Christianity. Number 2, relationships as paramount. Jesus died to restore relationships. Relationship with God. 3, relationships with each other should be central. 4, a Christological interpretation of Scripture. By that I mean Christ is central to Scripture, so you work back from who he is. 5, theology, a theology of grace and freedom. 6, important one, theology of there is neither Jew nor Greek, bond nor free, male nor female. So the leadership of females is not an issue, neither is colour or earthly nationality, and if you will, our Jesus value system should outrank our culture. Some more points on values. Values that have a lifestyle that reflects the character of Jesus. Thereby we take on the mantle of Christ. Have what we consider is one that has relationship, that gives meaning to life. Knows that Christ is central in the story of God's creation because he restores perfection. Knows that grace fulfills, then surpasses law and brings freedom. Values the equality of all, where all are identified in the cross. It would be a good idea to have another look at what is the difference between the thinking that was Hebraic and what is and still is Greek thinking and value, of which much of our current culture demonstrates. This would be another way of checking our real values. And I think for some it would give you quite a surprise. And as you already know from this course, you'll find a comparison analysis in my book, Jacob, A Fatherless Generation. Scripture says, Romans 8:29, and this is from the Amplified Bible, "For those whom he foreknew, of whom he was aware of and loved beforehand, he also destined from the beginning, foreordaining them to be moulded into the image of his Son, and share inwardly his likeness, that he might become the firstborn among many brethren." Or Romans 12:2, New Living Translation, "Don't copy the behaviour and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Then you will learn to know God's will for you, which is good and pleasing and perfect." I hope you've enjoyed this course and found it interesting and useful. I'm going to give you the last final test now. For your test for this final lecture number 10, I'd like you to write a book review on the book Culture Clash, 500 words. You don't need to review the course part of the book, that's the last 2 sections of the book, but just the first section, i.e. the book part of the book. It'll make sense when you look at it. So just a 500 word book review.